Part 50. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 491. To be cautious, Suliang said to Ying Kaoj next to Guz. Don't know why. It's obviously too quiet here, so even if there was a war, it would have been buried in the dust of history. But Suliang felt a danger inexplicably, which made him not want Ying Kaoj to get close. But Ying Kaoj was a little hesitant. She could clearly help her man now. To this, Suliang just shook his head and said nothing more. Immediately. Then he stepped out of the jungle and directly entered the deserted area. Volume 1 Chapter 454, Warm Simulation, feeling like I need a knife in the back. He walked straight forward, and a long time passed without Suliang encountering any danger. Could it be that my feelings were wrong? I always feel like something's not quite right. Suliang frowned slightly, a little confused, and subconsciously looked back to see how far he had gone. But at this moment, roar! A roar sounded, and the surrounding scene suddenly changed. The originally empty and silent battlefield changed at this moment. It seemed like after a while of distortion, countless ferocious demon soldiers appeared in front of Suliang. The demon soldiers were ferocious, violent, and brutal, roaring and going crazy, trying to annihilate everything in front of them and turn it into ashes. And this moment, Suliang was the only one facing these terrifying demon soldiers that could destroy the world. Phantom. Suliang frowned and sensed it carefully, then shook his head. No, not an illusion. He has experienced many illusions. Even the most realistic illusions are inherently false and have flaws. Even if he can't see it, his feeling will tell Suliang what is true and what is false. But at this moment, all this is in front of me. It's all true, nothing false. But, how is this possible? How did these magic soldiers appear? And why do they appear here? Here, what happened? Suliang was full of doubts and felt that there were many doubts on this battlefield. But this moment is not the best time for Suliang to think. Just because. There, riding on a ferocious beast, he looked like a leader. Already, the order to attack has been issued. At this moment, 100,000 demon soldiers surged in like a tidal wave, vowing to tear Suliang to pieces completely. Suliang's expression was solemn, and his whole body tensed up. These magic soldiers may not be very strong individually. At most, they are only in the realm of immortality. The weak ones may even have to transform into dragons, and the Grand Master, even one burst of Suliang's momentum can kill them instantly. However, the number is too much. There are 100,000 demon soldiers, even if Suliang dies from exhaustion, he may not be able to kill them all. However, at this moment, Suliang has no way out. In this case, the only option is to fight. Only by fighting desperately can we have a chance of survival. What can 100,000 demon soldiers do? A chicken and a dog. Cut. A soft drink. Suliang slashed out with his sword, and his sword intention soared into the sky, heading straight towards the sky. Between the vertical and horizontal sword light, dozens of demonic soldiers fell under this sword. However, overall, the loss of just a few dozen is no big deal. Suliang naturally knew this. Therefore, the sword has no regrets, the deep sea returns to the original strength, the Tao method is natural, and the various exquisite sword skills learned from his master, Jing Meng, Fukang Dao sect, etc. are all displayed one by one. In an instant, there was endless sword energy on and above the battlefield. Under each sword energy, dozens of demon soldiers fell. For a time, no one around Suliang could get close. However, gradually, Suliang's true energy was consumed too much, and even his sword energy felt a little cut off. And take advantage of this opportunity. The demonic soldiers surged up and slashed at Suliang with the sharp blades in their hands. The number was so large that even Suliang would never be able to withstand it. It seemed that at this moment, Suliang was really in a desperate situation. However, my ladies are still waiting for me at home, how could I die here? A will to survive burst out in a desperate situation, urging Suliang's cultivation to continue to move forward. In an instant, it's already a breakthrough. New strength filled up and Suliang regained his strength again. After a long time, there was no living thing around Suliang. And Suliang has reached the peak of immortality. Him at this moment. Compared with before, it can be said that the strength has been improved dozens of times. Detached. He is no longer worthy of competing with Suliang at this time. Call. After taking a long breath, Suliang relaxed, supported his tired body, and walked towards the center of the battlefield. The feeling that was vague just now finally became clear at this moment. He clearly felt that what the Queen of the Abyss was looking for was in the center of the battlefield. Come to the center of the battlefield. Suliang slashed towards the ground with his sword. When the hard ground shattered, a hairpin fell out. Holding the hairpin in his hand, Suliang frowned, a little confused. The Queen of the Abyss allowed herself to run so far, and what she was looking for was just a hairpin. Certainly. Suliang could naturally feel the connection between this hairpin and himself. But, what is the meaning of this hairpin? I can't figure it out, I really can't figure it out. And immediately after, everything around him dispersed, revealing his original dilapidated and desolate appearance. Disappeared. It was obviously the battlefield where he and 100,000 demon soldiers were fighting, but it just disappeared like that. It's a little too outrageous, what on earth is going on? Suliang became more and more puzzled. But anyway, let's go back and talk about it first. After returning to the battlefield, Suliang met Yingqioj. Lang Jun, what are you? Yingqioj asked worriedly when he saw Suliang covered in blood. It doesn't matter, I finally found the thing. Suliang just shook his head and showed the hairpin in his hand, let's go back. Immediately. After the two of them cleaned up a little at the lake before, they set off on their way back. The holy mountain, where Suliang and others stayed temporarily. After returning home, Suliang just said hello to Wanqing and others, and then went back to his room. Next moment. New binding object detected, Queen of the Abyss. A new round of simulation can be started. Is the host enabled? The sound of the system suddenly appeared in Suliang's ears. The new simulation is just started? The key is actually the hairpin in your hand? It seems that this time, it is with the Queen of the Abyss. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 492. Suliang thought for a moment and nodded, start the simulation. Immediately. Suliang's eyelids gradually darkened, and darkness swallowed up everything in front of him. Liang, do you think our parents will agree to what we are doing? The girl leaned on the boy and smiled happily and sweetly. Looking at the girl's appearance, she looks like Xiaojiabiu, pure, cute and kind. Looking at her gorgeous clothes and elegant manners, it is obvious that she is a wealthy lady. Next to the girl was her beloved boy. Now, feeling the tenderness and fragrance of the beautiful woman in his arms, the young man put his arms around the slender waist of his beloved girl and said with a smile, don't worry, although we haven't told our family about our affairs yet, they all know about it. How could they disagree? Hear this. The girl nodded and smiled sweeter, that's right. She and the young sweetheart beside her have a deep relationship. All this is actually seen by the family. In fact, both families are very satisfied with them. How could it be possible to stop them? Caressing the hair of the girl next to him, the boy suddenly said, where are we going to play today? Why don't we go outside the city? The girl suddenly thought of something. I know a place where many couples go to play. It seems very interesting. Why don't we go take a look too? A boy never refuses a girl's wish. So, he nodded and smiled gently. Okay, let's set off now. Under the wishing tree. The girl made a sincere wish and did not want to be separated from the person she loved most. It is said to be a wishing tree, but in fact, it is just a huge tree that has grown for a long time. But many lovers came to make wishes under this tree and tied their wishes to the branches. Therefore, this form gradually spread and became quite popular. But actually, young girls come here just to clarify their wishes. After a while, the girl opened her eyes and looked at the boy beside her. What is your wish? Yeah, I want to go tonight and have a bowl of noodles made by you. The young man said with a smile. His smile was gentle, but in his eyes, there was a bit of narrow-mindedness and inextricable doting and love. Obviously, he was joking. How could you make such a wish? But the girl took it seriously, puffing out her cheeks and staring with beautiful eyes. Humph, I'm ignoring you. Say it. The girl turned and left. What? I have always wanted to come here with him, but he actually made such a wish. Not happy, very unhappy. However, as soon as she took a step forward, the girl's hand was held. The boy hugged the girl from behind, leaned close to the girl's ear, and said softly, my wish is to eat what you cook every day from now on. That is to say, for the rest of my life, I just want to be with you. These words. It instantly melted the girl's heart. This is pretty much it? The girl murmured softly, but her pretty face turned crimson, and the love in her eyes was so strong that it couldn't be melted away. There was silence under the huge canopy of trees. The sun is just right and the breeze is gentle. The young man sat leaning against the tree canopy, with the head of his beloved girl resting on his shoulder. That's great. The girl squinted her eyes and smiled, gently rubbing her little head on the boy's shoulder, and suddenly said, when are you going to my house to propose marriage? Why are you so anxious? Do you want to marry me? The boy smiled and looked at the girl. Where is it? The girl immediately became shy. Oops, I finally mustered up the courage to say it. It's okay if you don't agree. How could you do this? Available immediately. The young man carelessly stroked the girl's hair and said with a smile, actually, as long as you want, you can stay at my house anytime. Even, I'm ready. As long as you agree, I can do it right away. Really, really. The girl immediately raised her head, looking at the boy with a shy face but expectantly. The young man nodded and suddenly became serious. Are you willing to marry me? The girl was stunned for a moment, then lowered her head and murmured, I am willing. While talking, a tear came from the corner of the girl's eyes, showing happiness and joy. The boy held the girl's face and kissed her gently. Immediately. But he took out a hairpin and put it gently on the girl's head. Looking at the girl's beautiful face, the young man smiled, it's very beautiful. How about this hairpin as a token of our love? Keep it well. This hairpin bears witness to our love. The girl nodded vigorously, stroked the hairpin on her head, and smiled happily. Time passes, in the blink of an eye, a long time passes. After returning home, people from the young man's family immediately came to propose marriage. The two have been childhood sweethearts and have a deep relationship. Both families see it, so naturally there is nothing they won't agree to. Then, in this way, the two set a future wedding date. And among them, there seemed to be a picture that flashed by. It was on the battlefield where hundreds of thousands of demonic soldiers surged forward. And in a blink of an eye, then came the day when boys and girls got married. This day, the two houses were decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, and the gongs and drums were noisy. It was extremely lively. Red joy filled the two houses. The young man was neatly dressed, a gentle gentleman, riding a horse to welcome his wife. The girl, on the other hand, was sitting in the room, slowly dressing up. Looking at her charming appearance in the mirror in front of her. The girl couldn't help but touch the hairpin on her head, as if feeling the warmth of the person she loved deeply in her heart. Would he really like me like this? But then, the girl murmured to herself, a little worried about gains and losses. The young lady is beautiful and fragrant. How could my uncle not like her? The maid on the side responded with a smile. The maid and the girl have been together since childhood, and starting from today, they will naturally follow the young lady to that new home. That's it, that's good. The girl nodded, let the maid cover her head, and led her to the young man's sedan chair. There was another round of gongs and drums, and along the way, the young man was in high spirits with a smile on his face. Even on the way, the passing guests received many red envelopes as a reward, which was considered a blessing. Return to the boys' home. The boys and girls stood in front of the hall and bowed first to heaven and earth, second to the high hall, and then the husband and wife bowed to each other. From then on, they were husband and wife for life and could never be separated again. At night, after the guests dispersed, the young man returned to the room with some drunkenness. And his wife, his childhood sweetheart, was sitting quietly on the bed, waiting for his arrival. But those jade hands were clenched tightly, showing the girl's nervousness. Madam, starting from today, I have to change my title. The young man smiled gently, picked up the things on the side, and came to the girl. Immediately. Take a deep breath. The boy took off the red hijab. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 493. Underneath is the girl's charming face, which can be both angry and happy. Gorgeous. The boy caressed the girl's face, lovingly doting on her. Mr. Lang. The girl called out the name that appeared in her dreams countless times. Immediately. But her pretty face turned red and she turned away. Mr. Lang, it's getting late. It's time to rest. Indeed. The boy nodded seriously and sat next to the girl. Immediately. Putting his hands on the girl's shoulders, feeling the hardness of the girl's delicate body, the young man smiled, Come, let me undress my wife for my husband. Madam, relax. After a while, the candlelight went out. But the room was not silent. Volume 1 # Chapter 456 Milk-flavored reward, don't you like this? Darkness appeared again, swallowing Suliang, but then slowly receded. Suliang opened his eyes, sat up, rubbed his eyebrows, and recalled everything that had happened in the simulation. That girl turned out to be the Queen of the Abyss. Certainly. It was different from the charming, majestic, and domineering Queen of the Abyss that Suliang had seen. The Queen of the Abyss in the simulation is Xiajiabiu, a rich lady, very tender. That hairpin is the token of love between the two of them, and it is indeed related to both of them. But before, he experienced the doubtful battlefield in the Fuxi Abyss. It's actually a projection of the past. That is to say, that was something that had already happened, it was just reproduced by the projection. No wonder the appearance and disappearance of those 100,000 demonic soldiers were so bizarre. Open the window. Suliang stood in front of the window, but his expression was not very good. The scene in the simulation can be described as very warm and sweet, almost to the point of killing singles. But Suliang's mind was filled with doubts. This is the first time he has experienced such a sweet simulation. I always feel like I need a knife from behind. The simulation came to an end for the time being, but more doubts remained in Suliang's heart. How did the Queen of the Abyss become what she is now? The girl in the simulation, Xiajiabiu, is very gentle, and she is also a lady, a rich lady. No matter how you look at it, the personality gap between her and the current Queen of the Abyss is too big, right? I really can't understand the changes. And how did the two people's token of love end up in the Fuxi Abyss, in the middle of the battlefield? Again, looking at the simulation, even if the boy and girl are not ordinary people, they will never have powers far beyond ordinary people like the previous simulations, right? Just like the human king, the immortal killing boy, Liasu true monarch, the overlord, and the little junior brother who followed the natural way of Taoism. It's not on the same level at all. Is this gap too big? I don't understand it, I don't understand it at all. Suliang rubbed his eyebrows and sighed, feeling filled with doubts. After so many simulations, these doubts have not only not been completely solved, but have become more intense. Every time, after answering some of Suliang's doubts, more doubts appeared. Suliang was completely confused. He didn't even have the slightest clue, let alone infer the truth from it. That's all, reasoning in vain here is of no use and there will be no results. Suliang shook his head and sighed, one day in the future, these doubts will be answered. This is the thought. Suliang stood up, cleared his mind, and walked out of the room. However, as soon as he went out, he saw the shadow of Holy Lord Zai Shen, He Ying. Suliang almost shouted the word Holy Lord, but fortunately he stopped in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid 11 Hang will really be unhappy. The one in front of me is the Holy Lord. Why are you here? Suliang asked with some confusion. You were gone for many days, and I was alone and very unhappy. 11 Hang's delicate face had a gentle smile. Immediately, without hesitation, he directly took Suliang's hand and asked, did you go to the Fuxi Abyss? Yes, yes. Suliang nodded and admitted. When he left, he didn't hide his purpose in the first place, and his ladies basically knew it. And 11 He Ying clings to Suliang every day. As soon as Suliang disappears, she will naturally look for him. And facing the Holy Lord. At least his master and Jingmeng should not be hiding anything. But Suliang wasn't worried about the Holy Master knowing. He also had speculations about the identity of the Holy Lord. At least, she would never harm herself. If he couldn't go to that place, 11 Hang would have stopped Suliang before he set off. For a being with 11 Hang's cultivation level, no one in the Su family can stop what she wants to hear. It just depends on whether she wants to know or not. For her, there are no secrets in the Su family. Really? 11 Hang didn't mean to blame him at all. Instead, with a gentle and charming smile on his face, he took Suliang's hand and walked all the way to the room. What did you encounter along the way? There's no danger. Suliang thought for a while, and then told 11 Hang what he could tell about his experiences along the way. But in fact, there is not much hidden in total. At most, it was just what happened while taking a bath with Ying Kaoj. Looking at it this way, it's quite thrilling. 11 He Ying sat down with Suliang. Fuxi Abyss is the head of the 9 provinces. For countless years, almost no one has entered it. It's normal for something magical to happen in a place like this. He Ying is right. Suliang echoed. Seeing that they all sat down, 11 Hang still had no intention of letting go of his hand, so he asked, is there anything else? It's not that Suliang wants to be a shadow of the past. However, the relationship between the two is really not that close. When getting along with his wives, no matter what his wives do, Suliang can handle it calmly. What can I support or not? The big deal is, I won't support it. But it's no different from the past. You have to withstand it even if you can't. Not to mention, recently, 11 Hang has been extra dependent on Sul Yang. He almost doesn't care about the difference between men and women. Sul Yang said that he really couldn't bear it. It's alright. However, 11 Hang held Sul Yang with one hand and supported his chin with the other. He looked at Sul Yang with a smile. You haven't come back for many days. I am very unhappy alone. Can't you just stay with me here? I think. Sul Yang subconsciously wanted to refuse, but looking at the attachment in 11 Hang's eyes, he still didn't say the words of refusal. At last, he could only nod. Okay, I understand. The words just fell. 11 Hang came up. Immediately, he actually held Sul Yang's head directly and pressed it on his peak. Well, this is a reward for staying with me. 11 Hang crossed his arms tightly and nodded as if it was a matter of course. Well, Sul Yang kept struggling and felt like he could hardly breathe. God knows how difficult it is to bear the shadow of the past now. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 494. After the doll's body was broken, 11 He Ying was extremely gentle and soft. Especially the peak. Soft, smooth, warm, and milky. Originally, Sul Yang could still breathe, but now the shadow of the past makes Sul Yang unable to breathe. After a long time, Sul Yang finally struggled out. I only feel that my breath still carries the illusion of milky fragrance. What, don't you like this reward? 11 Hang asked with a gentle smile. Volume 1 Chapter 457, 6K, Unprecedented Crisis, the real confrontation with the abyss. But there was a little bit of danger in his eyes. See this? Sul Yang didn't dare to refuse, so he could only nod hurriedly. I like it, of course I like it. No, it can never go on like this. If he was alone in a room with 11 Hang again, Sul Yang felt that he might really not be able to bear it. Think about it. Sul Yang thought of a good reason. Why don't I make you something delicious? I remember that the treasures I bought last time that can help you recover are still there. How about I make them for you to eat? Hear this. 11 Hang subconsciously thought of Sul Yang's craftsmanship. That delicious feeling is really something that you will never forget once you take a bite. Recently, 11 He Ying, after eating something made by Sul Yang, I couldn't eat anything else. And no appetite at all. Then he nodded and said, okay. Available immediately. However, 11 Hang stood up together with Sul Yang and said very naturally, I'll go with you. You and me. Sul Yang opened his mouth and said, it's better to say goodbye. Places like the kitchen are full of fireworks. It's not suitable for a gentle fairy like you at all. However, 11 Hang shook his head, I just want to take a look. What, am I not welcome? Welcome, absolutely welcome. Sul Yang immediately compromised. Go if you want, since it's cooking time anyway, so she shouldn't be doing anything, right? Maybe. Isn't this thing for refining medicine? How can it be combined with other things? 11 Hang looked at what Sul Yang was holding curiously and asked, I remember, there should be poison in it, right? As long as it is edible, there must be a corresponding treatment method. Sul Yang smiled while handling the ingredients. I have studied the refining process and found that there are several materials that can neutralize this toxicity. So, I took them out separately and used them to match, and then supplemented them with other materials. The effect was unexpectedly good. Of course, the effect is not as good as after refining, but the taste is much better. It can only be said that the effect is exchanged for the taste. It all depends on your own choice. Sul Yang said this easily, but the things in front of him were all rare treasures of heaven and earth. Using the effects of heavenly materials and earthly treasures in exchange for taste can only be said by people like Sul Yang who are backed by Tiandao sect, A sect with business all over the world. Even the Taoist masters of the sect were reluctant to say such words. Certainly. In the final analysis, Suliang still didn't want 11 Hang to eat those things that were either bitter or tasteless. There are good options out there, so why eat the bad ones? Anyway, it's just some effects. Nothing happens now. It's okay to let 11 Hang rest for a few more days. Suliang doesn't care about the losses. It is too hard to guard 11 Hang for thousands of years, so let her rest for a few more days. And 11 Hang naturally knew what Suliang was thinking. Therefore, at this moment, she was smiling with her eyes narrowed, extremely happy. Can be followed immediately. 11 Hang suddenly said, "How about I give it a try?" You. Suliang was stunned, "Can you?" 11 Hang shook her head. Even her body had been replaced by a doll, so naturally she had never tried such a thing. But the reason why I don't know how to do it is that I have to try it. And 11 Hang looked at Suliang's movements and said, "I feel like it shouldn't be difficult." That's right. Seeing Suliang chopping vegetables, he was using swordsmanship. He knew swordsmanship himself, and if he used his swordsmanship with his own strength, what he could cut would definitely be better than Suliang's. Looking at 11 Hang's expression, Suliang didn't know what she was thinking. However, cooking is really not that simple. Just a simple chopping of vegetables is not as simple as cutting the vegetables into pieces. Not difficult. How about I ask you? Suliang smiled, and then asked, "Do you know what the internal textures of various ingredients are like? If you don't know this and cut rashly, you will only damage the taste of the ingredients and you won't be able to do your best." Immediately. Seeing that 11 Hang was a little confused, Suliang said again, "I'll ask you again. Do you know what angle, strength, and tools should be used to handle various ingredients? Is it so troublesome?" 11 Hang looked confused. "Why do you think these things are much more troublesome than being a holy lord yourself?" "Yes, that's it, and this is just the basics." Suliang spread his hands, "How about it, do you still want to learn?" To this, 11 Hang thought for a moment, but still nodded, "Yes. This is already the case, why do you still want to try?" Suliang thought for a while. As a holy lord, she has been guarding for thousands of years, but she may not have seen such an ordinary scene. It seems that this kind of thing is new to her. That being the case, then let her try it. Then Suliang nodded, "Well, since you want to try it, then it's up to you. Say it." Then he handed the thing in his hand to 11 Hang's hand, "You try it first. If there is anything wrong, I will correct it." "Uh-huh." 11 Hang nodded, holding a sword in his hand and pointing it at the thing on the chopping board. Bass. A crisp sword sound sounded, and under the urging of 11 Hang's transcendent strength, everything on the chopping board was shattered into pieces. "It's really smashed. It can't be broken anymore. It's completely unusable. You are really quick to start." Suliang sighed helplessly. He had said that he would correct him if he made any mistakes, but 11 Hang started so quickly that he didn't even have time to point out the mistakes. "How about it, I'm great, right?" 11 Hang put one hand on his waist and felt a little proud. Boom. But Suliang gave her a shudder and glared at her, "Why is it so awesome? This is completely different. Forget it, let me demonstrate it to you. You can watch it carefully." However, 11 Hang actually didn't return the long sword in his hand to Suliang. This time, Suliang was a little confused. "If you don't give me the tool, how do you want me to demonstrate it?" To this, 11 Hang stood directly in front of the table. Immediately, he looked at Suliang and gestured, "Teach me. Does this mean step-by-step instruction?" Suliang was stunned for a moment, looking a little strange. but he didn't mean to refuse immediately. This feeling is just like Jing Meng teaching him personal swordsmanship. It should be okay, right? Then Suliang reluctantly agreed, okay. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 495. While talking. Then he came directly behind 11 Hing, stretched out his arms, and hugged 11 Hing. Holding 11 He Ying's tender jade hand, Suliang made very formal movements. Look, this should be done, there is no point in doing it too fast. Only when it is handled correctly can these things be used. However, Suliang looked serious on the surface, but in reality, he felt very embarrassed. After all, 11 Hang's plump figure is so proud, isn't it? Even though he hugged her from behind. But the shadow of 11 He often wanders unconsciously. The soft, straight contours behind her body fit her tightly. The slightest movement of 11 Hang would cause Suliang to step back unconsciously. Then 11 Hang followed instead. This feeling is really subtle and complicated, and it is difficult for Suliang to explain it clearly. Finally, after a while, Suliang gritted his teeth slightly and finished all the teaching. Okay, you should have learned it, right? Said. Just let go and watch from the sidelines. However, 11 Hang came up directly. Immediately afterwards, the whole person leaned into Suliang's arms. A pair of soft, boneless white jade hands grasped Suliang. 11 Hang pouted and shook his head. No, otherwise, will you teach me again? I promise, I will learn it this time. Haven't learned yet? With your talent and cultivation, no matter how difficult the martial arts is, you can learn it after watching it a few times. Now you can't even do this simple teaching? Are you real or do you lack talent? Suliang was helpless and didn't want to agree. He really didn't know how long he could last. But 11 Hang wanted to get into Suliang's arms regardless of whether Suliang agreed or not. However, just then, boom! A loud roar suddenly followed. And the direction it came from. But it is the direction of the demon-suppressing dragon vein. Problem occurs. 11 Hang's eyes immediately sharpened, and he no longer had the gentle and charming feeling around Suliang. The demon-suppressing dragon vein, could it be that the barrier has been opened again? Suliang also put down what he was holding, frowning and guessing. Not necessarily, I can only go and have a look first. 11 He Ying shook his head. This place was actually quite far away from the demon-suppressing dragon vein. 11 He Ying's body had not fully recovered yet, so he couldn't feel it too carefully. But Suliang already had a guess in his mind. He remembered the heart palpitations he had felt when the Abyss family appeared before. The feeling that someone needed him was still fresh in his memory and could not be forgotten. Although I have found the materials, I have temporarily repaired the Long River barrier. But this kind of repair is different from the original after all, and it is natural that it is unstable. If a powerful person opens the passage inside, the repaired Long River barrier may not be able to withstand it. The most important thing is that the repair of the demon-suppressing dragon vein also takes time. But now, the time is too short, not enough at all. Let's go and see. Let's go together. Suliang said to 11 Hang, subconsciously holding the hairpin that he had put away. Perhaps, it's time to give this thing to the Queen of the Abyss. And this time, Wan Qing and others also walked out of the room and came to Suliang. Suliang, what's going on? Qin Benjiao looked at the direction of the change with some confusion. From there, she felt a very unpleasant aura. No matter what, it's about the demon-suppressing dragon vein and there's no room for carelessness. Wan Qing shook her head. Holy Lord, do we want to go check it out? Let's go. 11 Hang did not refuse. If an accident really happened to the demon-suppressing dragon veins and the Changhe barrier, 11 Hang would also need the power of Wan Qing and others. Even though she has mastered the mystical realm, her strength is unparalleled and she is almost invincible. But in the end, the time was still too short and not all the recovery was possible. It is really difficult to deal with an enemy that is too powerful. Then, waiting for everyone in the Su family to gather together, 11 Hang waved his jade hand lightly, leading everyone together, taking one step forward, and arrived in front of the demon-suppressing dragon vein. Really? Appearing in front of everyone. It's the crumbling river barrier and the passage that's about to open. We cannot let the passage open, otherwise, abyssal creatures will pour out and we may not be able to resist them. Wan Qing immediately frowned and figured out the key to the matter. But how could Wan Qing not know that 11 Hang's body had not fully recovered after being at Su's house for so many days? With her current weakness, it is too difficult to suppress the foreign passage. Although Wan Qing and Jing Meng were in good condition, they still couldn't suppress the foreign passage. The two of them couldn't withstand the bombardment from the strong men on the opposite side. What should I do? For a while, Suliang and others all frowned and thought, but they were unable to do anything. For today's plan, it is better to inform the Holy Land as soon as possible. 11 Hang said lightly, since the foreign passage cannot be suppressed, then don't think about suppressing it. The few of us can more or less resist here for a while. As for the rest, all that's left is to find a way to resist the attack of the abyssal creatures. At least, we also need to leave some time for everyone in the world to prepare. Certainly. If Suliang and others' counterattack is strong enough, maybe it's really possible to fight back the attacks of abyssal creatures. Qing Qian, Yao Yao, you two, go and tell the Holy Land this news. Suliang thought for a while and found the two weakest people among the Su family. But Mu Qingqian was a little hesitant. She didn't want to leave Suliang at this time. And Tao Yaoyao was even more direct, no, I won't leave. It's just a briefing. You can still come back later. Suliang smiled and comforted. He believed in his wife's strength. Even if the deep passage was opened, it might be dangerous for his wife to deal with it, but it would never be life-threatening. As for Tao Yaoyao's identity as a demon, it's already this time, why do you still care about the righteous and evil ways? Isn't there Mu Qingqian? She still needs to have the reputation of a righteous goddess. In that case, okay. Tao Yaoyao and Mu Qingqian hesitated for a while, but agreed. Immediately. He immediately turned around and left here. Time was tight at this time and there was no room for them to hesitate. After the two left, the demon-suppressing dragon veins fell into silence for a moment. Only the other end of the passage was left, and the sound of the most powerful people bombarding the passage could be heard. After a while, click. There was a shattering sound, and the long river barrier could no longer bear it. Boom. There was another impact, and a corner of the long river barrier was finally broken. And the passage was finally opened. Next moment. It seems that they are worried that the foreign passage will be closed again. Immediately, countless abyssal creatures surged out from it, like a tide that could not be cut off. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 496. See this. 11 Hang subconsciously wanted to take action. However, Suliang stopped her directly. He Ying, don't take action yet. Why? 11 Hang looked at Suliang doubtfully. If you can bombard the passage, there may be strong ones among the abyss creatures behind this passage. And now, the strongest person among us is you, but you are still weak. So, you'd better conserve your strength. If a strong person appears, we will have to rely on you to fight. As for Wanking and Jingmeng, the two of them don't need to worry too much. The abyss creatures that appear now are not too powerful. With their cultivation level, fighting will not cost too much and they can recover in just one breath. And at the moment when the passage opened, Suliang did sense the aura of the Queen of the Abyss. After meeting her several times, he was very familiar with the aura of the Queen of the Abyss. Hear what Suliang said. 11 Haing thought for a moment and nodded, "Okay, I'll listen to you." Immediately, Suliang and others directly faced the abyssal creatures. All of a sudden, a group of powerful beings whose lowest cultivation level is the immortal realm and the highest cultivation level is above the transcendence realm, but are able to cross the border and fight. Those abyss creatures that surged out were severely damaged in an instant. In just the blink of an eye, everyone died. Even the surging current in the passage paused for a moment. But Suliang and others did not feel any excitement about this. Although there is only one passage, there is an endless supply of abyssal creatures. Even if the strength is not high, once the number increases, it will be a burden to Suliang and others. Not to mention, among the creatures of the abyss, there are also powerful ones, and there are many people who have cultivated beyond immortality. Really? Less than a moment. Then more powerful abyss creatures appeared. It was a bit difficult for Suliang and others to take action. Today, the first opening of the far-reaching passage. The real confrontation between reality and the abyss comes. For this world, it is also an unprecedented crisis. The battle continues. In the foreign passage, abyssal creatures pour out like a tide, endless. Just looking at it makes people despair. Being in it, he was completely surrounded by abyssal creatures. Even though he tried his best to kill them, they seemed to be unable to kill them all. This feeling is like being surrounded by enemies all over the world, which makes people desperate. If they are a little careless, they will be hit. Immediately afterwards, countless attacks will fall, causing people to be severely injured and even die on the spot. But luckily, at this moment, those inside were Suliang and others. Whether it is Suliang or Qin Benjao and other girls, they are all determined and have extraordinary means. During the battle, he was not affected by the creatures of the abyss at all. No matter how close the abyssal creatures were, the attacks seemed to be continuous and they did not suffer any damage. In the battlefield, Suliang held Lei Zhang, and the power of thunder surged out from it, destroying all kinds of evil. Any abyssal creature that dares to come forward will fall into Lei Zhang's release of power before it gets close to Suliang. Suliang, who was holding the holy object, didn't carry it at all. Nether Sea returns to Yuan Jin. With a soft drink, the sword energy evolved from Ming Hai Giwen Jin spread all over the body, densely packed and countless. As early as when his strength was still weak, Suliang urged Ming Hai Giwen Jin to use his sword energy, and he was able to manifest hundreds of swords. The attacks are like forts, continuous and intimidating, making them invincible. At this moment, Suliang's cultivation has reached the peak of immortality realm, and he has already reached the ranks of rare masters. Even putting it on a small sect like the original Tiandao sect, I am afraid it can revitalize a sect and make it unbeatable. At this time, he used the Ming Hai Giwen power again. The number was so huge that he couldn't stop counting money, and it really became a fort. This is truly continuous, and every moment, countless abyssal creatures die in Suliang's hands. Immediately, both heaven and earth will be destroyed. Suliang shouted softly again, and the energy of all things gathered in his hands, and he condensed it into a size as big as a bullet and shot it out. Its power, after being compressed, is extremely powerful. Every time it is used, there is a roar and explosion, and hundreds of abyssal creatures die in his hands. Sword out, no regrets. Suliang Lei Zhang held the sword in his hand and sent Wu Hui's sword intent straight into the sky. Before it was even used, it made people feel frightened. With one sword strike, even the abyssal creatures that have entered the realm of transcendence for the first time will fall into Suliang's hands. For a while, Suliang used all kinds of methods to his fullest, and the surrounding area was completely blank. No abyssal creature could approach. Such efficiency is much stronger than the others combined. And at the same time, Qin Benjao's experience in time and space was unleashed, and the whole body or space was distorted, or time was accelerated or slowed down. It was strange and overbearing, making it difficult for people to guard against. Tan Qinja also tried her best. With her strong strength, even the transcendent abyss creatures couldn't catch her moves. Ying Kaoj, who was not far away from everyone, had already shown his tyrannical posture. The sharp claws are so sharp that they seem to be able to cut through space, making countless abyssal creatures tremble with fear. Even as a person of great luck, even Suliang gained everything through dual cultivation with Ying Kaoj and was recognized by the demon-suppressing dragon vein. How could Ying Chao Ge be weaker than Suliang? Fighting in the demon-suppressing dragon vein greatly increased Ying Kaoj's strength. His true energy was almost continuous and extremely powerful. Normally, she can use her Tyrannosaurus stance to compete with beings who have just entered the realm of transcendence. And at this moment, she has entered a state of transcendence for the first time. No longer an opponent. Compared to these few, the battle between Mu Qingqian and Tao Yaoyao seemed to be weaker. But the two have a special relationship, and when they work together seamlessly, their combat power far exceeds that of either of them alone. For a moment, it was not much weaker than others. As for Wan Qing and Jing Meng, that would be even more outrageous. The two of them went directly upstream and blocked the entrance to the foreign passage to fight. One has unfathomable cultivation and is extremely powerful, while the other has the pinnacle of swordsmanship and brilliant sword intent. The abyss creatures that were killed were almost cut off. For a while, with just a few of them, they were able to stop all the abyssal creatures that came this time. But gradually, as the abyss creatures continue to emerge, their strength continues to strengthen. Even though Wan Qing and Jing Men were extremely powerful, they couldn't guard against so many abyss creatures. Suliang and others also gradually felt the difficulty. Even Suliang jumped up and looked around the battlefield. Looking at his girlfriends, many of them looked tired. No, we can't go on like this. If we continue to fight like this, my ladies will be exhausted, and I'm afraid they will have an accident sooner or later. Everyone comes together, fights and retreats at the same time. Volume 1 Chapter 458 As long as you stay with me for 3 days, I will withdraw. Suliang said in a deep voice. But, if these abyssal creatures are allowed outside, the Holy Land will be in trouble. Tan Qinja hesitated. It doesn't matter, they should be able to handle it. Suliang shook his head. Anyway, Mu Qingqian and Tao Yaoyao have already passed on the news, so people outside should be prepared. There is no need to fight to the death here for myself and others. And just then, outside the demon-suppressing dragon vein, a large number of people suddenly poured in. There are elders of the Holy Land, supreme elders. There are a group of Tao masters, strong men, and talented disciples who came to participate in the election of the leader of the righteous path. Even there are still many people arriving in a steady stream. A passage to a foreign land opens, and abyssal creatures pour in. This is a disaster involving the entire world, and naturally they cannot stay away. See this. Suliang and others all breathed a sigh of relief. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 497. Have you finally arrived? I can breathe a sigh of relief. Then, Suliang asked all his girlfriends to gather around him, and those who came later could not fill the vacancies quickly. For a while, With the addition of these people, the trend of abyssal creatures entering has slowed down a lot. But if this continues, it is still not an option. There are stronger abyss creatures coming in. Someone shouted on the battlefield, attracting the attention of Suliang and others. Suliang looked around and saw a being who was beyond the pinnacle. He grabbed a genius and killed him. Even after this abyssal creature who transcended the pinnacle actually rushed straight towards the other geniuses. If this continues, these geniuses will suffer heavy losses. With their cultivation strength, they are no match for transcendent beings. Sword out, no regrets. Suliang immediately took action, and with a flash of sword light, he stopped the abyss creature in front of him and started fighting with it. After a while, he was finally killed. Suliang shook off the blood on the sword and looked around. In such a battle, someone would die all the time, and even the Taoist master would not necessarily be safe. This cannot go on. We have to find a way to end this. Thinking in his mind, Suliang looked at the foreign passage. Since abyssal creatures can come through this passage, can I also pass through? Why not go over there and look for the Queen of the Abyss? This is the thought. Suliang quickly made a decision, no longer hesitated, and headed towards the far-reaching passage. Although Suliang was very strong after charging all the way, by the time he reached the passage, he was already a little tired. In fact, there are too many strong people who have surpassed the immortality realm along the way. After all, Suliang is only at the peak of immortality and has not really entered the transcendence realm. It doesn't matter if the number is small, but it will be a bit difficult if the number is large. Why are you here? The moment she saw Suliang, Wan Qing immediately asked, her eyebrows furrowed, a little worried, this is not a place where you can compete. Wan Qing naturally knows best what her master's cultivation strength is. Although he can compete with the existence of transcendence, the abyss creatures appearing here are no longer just transcendence. The number is still extremely large. If master were to meet him, even the smallest one would be severely injured. Wave. Wan Qing wanted to send Suliang away. However, Suliang resisted Wan Qing's methods, shook his head and said, Master, continuing to fight like this is not an option. Although the people here are very strong, the number of abyssal creatures is too huge. If we continue to fight forcefully, the consequences will be unpredictable. Almost the most powerful beings of the righteous path are gathered here. Even the geniuses brought here are the most talented and powerful beings in each sect, which is equivalent to the continuation of the righteous path in the future. If he was just a little exhausted and couldn't resist, then it would be okay. But if you die here, whether it is those masters, Tao masters, or talented disciples, it is a loss that the righteous way cannot bear. Not to mention, the subsequent resistance against abyssal creatures will gradually become weak. But how could Wan Qing not understand these principles? However, she doesn't have any good ideas. Do you have any good ideas? Wan Qing asked subconsciously, since the master himself said this problem, he should have a solution. One of them, I entered the space channel to see the Queen of the Abyss. Suliang said firmly, I still have an agreement with the Queen of the Abyss. She won't do anything to me. Master, don't worry. No. Wan Qing immediately rejected Suliang's proposal without even thinking about it. Although she didn't know what the Queen of the Abyss's attitude was towards her master. But the Queen of the Abyss is too powerful. With Suliang's current cultivation level, it would be almost impossible to survive. Not to mention, not even Suliang could deal with all the abyssal creatures pouring in from the passage. It was a big problem for him to even get in front of the Queen of the Abyss. It's too late to hesitate. Suliang shook his head, this is the only way we can. Don't worry, Master, I will definitely come back. Say it. Suliang turned around and walked towards the foreign passage. See this. Wan Qing immediately took action to stop Sul Yang. However, her power was blocked by a powerful force coming from the foreign passage. Although this obstruction is only for a moment. But Sul Yang disappeared directly into the foreign passage. Good disciple. Wan Qing immediately panicked and was extremely worried. She knew only too well the horror of the abyss. Master, it was not easy for me to find you, but... Looking at the foreign passage with a frown, Wan Qing took a deep breath and attacked more fiercely. You must come back. Otherwise, even if I plunge into the abyss, I will still find you. In the channel. As soon as Sul Yang entered, he was ready for the battle. Then, the expected battle did not come. Abyssal creatures entered the human world one after another, but no one noticed Sul Yang at all. It was as if Sul Yang didn't exist. Frowning, Sul Yang tentatively walked towards an abyssal creature. But found out. The abyss creature actually avoided Sul Yang and left without looking back. He had no intention of taking action against Sul Yang at all. Just kidding, this is someone the Queen values and even issued a special order for him. Who dares to touch him? Isn't that seeking death? The other side. Sul Yang tried it a few times again and realized it clearly. It seems that it should be the Queen of the Abyss. In that case, let's go in and have a look. With this thought, Sul Yang strode out, and soon he walked out of the foreign passage. But what you see in front of you is not the scene of exotic creatures lining up to enter the passage. Instead, it's like a sleeping palace. The Queen of the Abyss is sitting on a throne, with her long and plump legs folded over each other, and a smile on her charming face. Are you here? There was some joy and expectation in this voice. Immediately, before Sul Yang could speak, the Queen of the Abyss stood up and came straight to Sul Yang's side. Immediately, opening her jade hand, the Queen of the Abyss looked forward to it. Did you bring the thing? Found it? Sul Yang nodded and handed the hairpin to the Queen of the Abyss. Is this a token of love? You. The Queen of the Abyss trembled, and she couldn't help but raise her jade hand, caressing Sul Yang's face, trembling slightly. What did you remember? Shaking his head, Sul Yang didn't say anything more. Instead, he asked, how many things are you hiding from me? One day, you will know. The Queen of the Abyss smiled and shook her head. Available immediately. But he hugged Sul Yang's arm, which was a little gentle. Since you're here, why don't you stay a little longer before leaving? It still doesn't work. I'm really worried about the situation outside. Sul Yang shook his head. His ladies were fighting outside, but he stayed to enjoy. He can't do this kind of thing. See this. The Queen of the Abyss waved her hand. Screens and pictures like last time appeared in front of Sul Yang. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 498. Above, Qin Binjao and others were fighting. Is this what you're talking about? The Queen of the Abyss smiled lightly, majestic and domineering. How about this? You stay with me for 3 days, and I will retreat obediently. So careless. As the Queen of the Abyss, she can really do whatever she wants. Sul Yang subconsciously asked, if that's the case, why do you want to take action against this world? In response, the Queen of the Abyss just shook her head and did not respond much. Facing the persecution from other domains, she really couldn't resist for long. Maybe just like this time, pretending to take action can delay it for a while. Do you agree or not? The Queen of the Abyss raised her head and asked majestically. Sul Yang was silent for a moment. He looked at the battle between his ladies on the screen, and then looked at the Queen of the Abyss in front of him. Finally, he nodded solemnly. Okay, I agree. For the sake of his wife, why not endure the humiliation and bear the burden? Anyway, it's not the first time. But Sul Yang agreed. The Queen of the Abyss showed a happy smile. come, give me a massage, my shoulders have been feeling very sore recently. While talking, the Queen of the Abyss swayed her petite feet happily, and it turned out to be feeling a bit coquettish. It is really abnormal for such a feeling to appear in a Queen of the Abyss. But Suliang didn't feel any violation at all. During simulation, the girl's gentle and charming appearance appeared in front of his eyes, making his eyes soften. Unconsciously, Suliang stepped forward and put his hand on the shoulder of Queen of the Abyss. Well, yes, it's right here. The Queen of the Abyss squinted her beautiful eyes, her charming face filled with satisfaction. It would be nice if I had more strength. Good. Suliang nodded, looking at the sky, speechless and choked. There is no way, there are still 3 days like this. For the sake of my wife, enduring humiliation and burden is nothing. This is how he comforted himself. After a long time, Suliang finally stopped and said, "The massage is over. It's time to end, otherwise, all that's left is to climb the peak." "Why is it over?" "There is more." The Queen of the Abyss was unwilling to let go, holding Suliang's hand and shaking it. Here, continue," said. The Queen of the Abyss raised her slender, plump legs and said with a smile, "See this?" Suliang rubbed his brows helplessly. Judging from the meaning of the Queen of the Abyss, it is obvious that it is not just the legs, but also the jade feet. "Is this appropriate?" Suliang said that I really don't want to. However, the Queen of the Abyss's inadvertent and charming appearance actually gave her a feeling of contrast. It's so unbearable. What else can be done? Suliang had no choice but to nod and agree, "Okay." Immediately. Then he sat in front of the Queen of the Abyss. He raised his hands and then put them down again, taking full control of the plump and beautiful legs. Moment. The smooth, soft wisps of fragrance immediately filled Suliang's senses. This is something you can hold in your hands and play with for a lifetime and never want to let go. Suliang's palms gently kneaded and massaged, either lightly or heavily. Soon, the Queen of the Abyss narrowed her eyes and relaxed. Along the way, Suliang stopped quickly. However, the Queen of the Abyss was unwilling. She raised her head and looked at Suliang. "Continue, why did you stop?" "I think it's not necessary." Suliang shook his head repeatedly. If he went up further, he would touch the profound taboo. In this regard, Suliang said that it was really not possible. Snort. The Queen of the Abyss snorted, but did not continue her request. She just said, "Okay, if you don't want to, forget it." Call. Suliang breathed a sigh of relief. After a long time. After the massage was over, Suliang stood up and stood next to the Queen of the Abyss. "Is it okay?" "Well, massage is fine." The Queen of the Abyss nodded, but then she stretched out her hand to Suliang. Come here." Suliang felt confused, but he also tried and put his hand on the jade hand of the Queen of the Abyss. But the next moment, I felt like the world was spinning. When he woke up, he was already in a hug. It was the Queen of the Abyss who took this opportunity to pull him into her arms. The proud peak rested on Suliang's head, pressing tightly. The Queen of the Abyss held Suliang in her arms, with a happy and comfortable smile on her face. "Just stay with me, okay?" To this, Suliang felt the softness behind him, and the top of his head was soft and elastic, with a fragrant fragrance. "As long as you are happy," Suliang said helplessly. Anyway, his whole body is now held in the hands of the Queen of the Abyss. It doesn't matter what she says. Hear this. The Queen of the Abyss smiled happily. Immediately. But he picked up the fruit next to him. After removing the skin, the Queen of the Abyss fed it to Suliang's mouth. "Come on, ah." Suliang opened his mouth subconsciously, ah. Accepts feeding mechanically. To this, the Queen of the Abyss didn't care either. After stuffing the fruit into Suliang's mouth, He pressed it a little harder. Suliang subconsciously closed his mouth. Then I felt something was wrong. What goes with the fruit? Obviously, the Queen of the Abyss has not stopped. So, what does the Queen of the Abyss want to do? Suliang was helpless and could only open his mouth and wait for the Queen of the Abyss to stop. The Queen of the Abyss smiled slyly and took her hand back. Then, he picked up another piece of fruit without caring and started eating it. That's great. Suliang sighed, feeling helpless. And immediately, the Queen of the Abyss actually started to point at the performance of her girlfriends on the screen, or commented, "Well, this Jean Binjao, I heard that she was the first one to follow you." Although the use of the power of time and space is still relatively rudimentary, it is still pretty good. It can be considered as an invasion. And this, Yingkaoj. What's going on with this tyrannical posture? It looks like it's very strong. Well, it's pretty strong. Suliang watched everything happening on the screen helplessly. My girlfriends are all working hard without realizing that their husband is being bullied by the Queen of the Abyss. And what about Suliang? You must be obedient, otherwise, the things I promised will not count. The Queen of the Abyss's voice rang in Suliang's ears, making Suliang feel even more helpless. Watching your ladies work hard while being bullied and threatened, this life is really helpless. Feeling the Queen of the Abyss once again dishonest hands, Suliang really didn't dare to move. I'm afraid that the Queen of the Abyss won't keep her words. In the Devil's Way, several demonic sect leaders gathered together to discuss something. The news has been confirmed. Previously, the Abyss family did appear in the Holy Land of Righteous Path and seemed to have caused some serious trouble. One of the sect leaders said with some joy in his voice, "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator." Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 499. What about the Holy Lord? Where is the Holy Lord who protects the Holy Land? Someone asked. The details are unclear, but it seems that the Holy Master went berserk later. Although he is back to normal now, he is still weak. After that, the Holy Lord was never seen again. It is said that he was cultivating somewhere. The man from before replied, his voice full of determination. The Holy Lord is weak, but this is our opportunity. The other man chuckled. This matter requires careful planning. Perhaps, we need to meet the master of the demon section. These words made everyone nod in agreement. That's right, I should go and ask for advice. Immediately, a few people set out to go to the original demon sect to meet the leader of the original demon sect. In the original demon sect, a beautiful shadow suddenly fell from the sky and landed here. Who dares to break into my original demon sect? Someone immediately stopped him and scolded him in a deep voice. Yinghuo, Yakshatong, there is important information that I want to provide to you, the Emperor. The man calmly informed that it was Yasha Hitomi who was captured before. Although she was captured, after so many things happened in the Holy Land, it was normal for Suliang and others to ignore her and let her run away. Moreover, the Lord of Yinghuo is no longer there, and Yashatong will naturally not stay any longer. After a while, Yaksha Hitomi was brought to the original demon sect leader. What news did you bring? The sect leader asked coldly. The Holy Lord of the Righteous Path is currently in a weak state, and his strength is at a loss. Yashatong was neither humble nor arrogant. What you should do is entirely up to you. I'm just here to deliver a message. I'll say goodbye. Say it. Turn around and leave without hesitation. And wait until Yashatong goes away. Behind the sect leader, a cold and charming royal sister walked out. Judging from the respectful way the sect leader treated her, it was obvious that he was also a powerful person. Yin-Yang Taoism. Dong Huang sat in the palace, surrounded by starry sky, twinkling and mysterious. In front of her, there was a chessboard. The chessboard also shone with a mysterious and ancient aura, making the entire chessboard sparkle with stars. This move should be here. Dong Huang murmured softly, picked up a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard. Volume 1 # Chapter 459, Already bullied, I have no love left. Look at the chessboard again. The black and white chess pieces are densely scattered. If you look closely, they actually represent the two paths of good and evil. And among the white righteous chess pieces, the most powerful part is a bit weak and carries inexplicable risks. If you think about it carefully, it may represent the weak Holy Lord. The part of the black demon chess piece, the strongest place, was at its peak. Perhaps it was the mysterious power behind the original demon sect Demon Lord. And at this moment, the black chess pieces gradually appeared to be encircling them, and a conspiracy could be vaguely seen among them. A small chessboard can calculate the major conflicts between good and evil. Dong Huang's ability is really shocking. The confrontation between good and evil has reached a critical point. Dong Huang whispered to himself, placing the chess pieces on the chessboard one after another. At last, what emerges is a one-sided trend. In this confrontation, the right path will undoubtedly lose. Dong Huang shook his head and carefully observed everything on the chessboard. After a while, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. However, in this inevitable defeat, it is not without hope. Pick up a white chess piece again and place it on the chessboard. With one move, the entire righteous path is completely alive. Even though there were losses, he still escaped the fate of defeat. This is the key point in this confrontation between good and evil. Sul Yang. Another lonely voice sounded, naming the representative of this chess piece. Sul Yang will be the key to breaking the game. Whether he can break the situation depends on his choices and actions. At this time, in the Holy Land of Righteousness, 3 days have passed, and a group of righteous people are still fighting bloody battles here. However, at this point in the battle, everyone in Jendao was exhausted, and the losses were not small. Even those Tao masters and strong men, after 3 days of continuous bloody battles, among the enemies, there were not many who could compare with them. But while having to deal with the almost endless surging abyss creatures, and at the same time taking care of his apprentices and juniors, the energy consumption is really not small. As for those geniuses from various sects, their cultivation levels are not too strong after all, and they are still a little reluctant to fight at this level. Even if the rotation has been arranged, everyone has time to recuperate. But in the end, too many people died, and those who survived were all exhausted. Let alone fighting, they even had little strength to move. But even so. However, there seems to be an endless supply of abyssal creatures that has not been cut off. When will it end? Tao Yaoyao couldn't help shouting. In the past 3 days, she and Mu Qingqian fought together, but they didn't get much time to rest at all. By now, not only was she exhausted, her clothes were a little messy, but even her charming and pretty face was dirty. Does she not want to rest? How can it be? Whenever she wanted to take a break, Mu Qingqian would throw a sarcastic comment at her, forcing her to persist. Mu Qingqian, violent woman, I'm not done with you. What's more, my eldest sister and other sisters are insisting that if they leave, what's going on? If you can't hold on, you can leave. I am enough alone. Mu Qing said lightly. If she were not in a similar situation to Tao Yaoyao at the moment, Tao Yaoyao would probably believe it. Stop talking and save your energy. Maybe we will have to hold on for a while. Tan Qingzhe reminded softly. The tide of abyss creatures cannot be left to those Tao masters and strong men. When the geniuses couldn't hold on any longer, they were the last to hold on. If you persist a little longer, maybe it will be over soon. Qin Benjao comforted the two of them and looked at Ying Kaoj again. Sister Ying, are you okay? During the 3 days of fighting, Ying Kaoj took over many powerful people who came to attack and kill the transcendent realm. There were many times when I couldn't maintain my Tyrannosaurus posture, and I could only barely return to my normal fighting state, which definitely took a lot of effort. It doesn't matter to me, I can still persevere. Ying Kao shook his head and looked in the direction of the passage. There, Wan Qing and Jing Meng seemed to be tireless. Just 2 people blocked the passage, which could be said to have relieved the pressure behind them. But how long can this situation last? And just then, whoo! A loud buzzing sound came from the passage. Immediately afterwards, all the abyss creatures stopped. Immediately, without hesitation, the abyss creatures all turned their heads and walked directly into the passage. It looked like he was about to retreat. The creatures of the abyss have retreated. Some people shouted in surprise, really unable to understand the scene in front of them. It's all right, they obviously couldn't hold it anymore, so why did they retreat? But just retreat, I really can't stand it anymore. The geniuses, who had long been exhausted, immediately dropped their weapons and sat down regardless of the mess on the ground. They really didn't have the strength to stand any longer, let alone chase down the retreating abyss creatures. At this moment, Wan Qing and Jing Meng both looked towards the foreign passage. Was this done by Master? Wan Qing was a little dazed. During these 3 days, she was worried about Suliang all the time, and there were even many times when she almost couldn't help but rush in to find him. She has been staying here just so that when Suliang comes out, she can see him immediately and take action to protect him. But even she didn't expect that Suliang really did it, actually put this disaster to rest. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 500. Master, what exactly have you done? Not. Wan Qing suddenly thought of the Queen of the Abyss's different attitude towards Suliang. After her master stayed for 3 days, wouldn't anything be possible? This made Wan Qing very worried. But immediately, Wan Qing rejected her idea. No, definitely not. A strong human being and a Queen of the Abyss have no relationship at all. How is it possible? I must be overthinking it. Abyss. In the palace, Suliang looked at the scene of the abyssal creatures retreating on the screen in front of him and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the Queen of the Abyss really kept her promise and retreated directly. Otherwise, if we continue fighting like this, I really don't know if any accidents will happen. So, are you satisfied? The Queen of the Abyss held Suliang's arm and let it sink into the peak, but it was a bit gentle and charming. Thanks. Suliang sincerely thanked the Queen of the Abyss. And to this, the Queen of the Abyss shook her head. Immediately, he actually stepped forward and said in a charming voice, "Since you want to thank me, why not do one more thing for me?" Hear this. Suliang immediately became vigilant. He sounded inexplicably, the last time he was caught by the Queen of the Abyss. What she did before finally letting herself go. That's really. It's hard to describe in one word. I think we can talk about this later. Suliang thought carefully and answered seriously. However, the Queen of the Abyss just smiled, but there was a sense of danger in that smile. Really, do you want another time? There is murderous intent. Suliang took a breath of air. Since you want my help, you should give me the right to refuse, right? It's a very simple thing, you can definitely do it. The Queen of the Abyss's smile became more and more charming. Immediately, Jade stretched out her hand and took Suliang's hand. The Queen of the Abyss led Suliang towards the throne where she had been sitting before. Immediately, he actually stretched out his hand to push Suliang and let Suliang sit over. Facing Suliang, the Queen of the Abyss curled up into Suliang's arms, her jade hands wrapped around Suliang's neck, and her long and plump legs were tied around her waist. In the end, do you want help? The Queen of the Abyss approached Suliang's ear and bit it gently. Do you still want to refuse? Please behave. Suliang answered with only 3 words. Snort. The Queen of the Abyss snorted and fell slowly. Suliang was completely suppressed. Before and after, the Queen of the Abyss didn't pause at all. Tell me, do you agree or not? This time, Suliang finally saw it. What the Queen of the Abyss said was just an excuse. How could she not know that she would not agree? But the more she refuses to agree, the more in line with her ideas, and she can use this reason to punish herself in various ways. If you agree, what can you do? Suliang felt that the Queen of the Abyss would not only not be surprised, but would also be very happy and do what she was going to do. From this point of view, no matter how I answer, it will not be right. Suliang sighed and simply kept silent. Just ignore you. See this. The Queen of the Abyss narrowed her beautiful eyes. Immediately, he actually leaned close to Suliang's ear again and whispered, "Huh, forget it if you don't agree. Anyway, no matter whether you agree or not, you can't stop me." The words fell. The Queen of the Abyss actually left directly. Immediately. All the way down, he came to Suliang. Putting her jade hand on the silk belt around her waist, she applied a little force and pulled it gently. The clothes are scattered and the peak is proud, but it has lost the restraint it should have and is wider. Immediately, the Queen of the Abyss stepped forward, pressing the peak. Hiss. Suliang looked up at the sky, speechless and choked with tears. After all, this is still the case. Why is this so? After a long time, the Queen of the Abyss sent Suliang to the passage. You can go back if you get out of here. The Queen of the Abyss's charming face also had a trace of blush. There is something I must tell you. Please say. Suliang's expression was numb, his eyes were lifeless, and he looked broken. The Queen of the Abyss didn't care, she already got everything she wanted. After suppressing her smile, the Queen of the Abyss warned, "You only have less than a month." A month. Suliang immediately returned to normal and frowned. What will happen then? The Queen of the Abyss shook her head and said nothing. Within a month, you must improve your cultivation to the realm of transcendence. When the time comes, I will come to pick you up, and you have to follow me to the abyss. Abyss. Suliang frowned and thought carefully about the key to see if he could find the truth. But in the end, he still found nothing, which made Suliang sigh. Why are they all the Riddler? Why don't you just tell me what happened? Seeing Suliang frowning and thinking like this, the Queen of the Abyss asked, "Why, don't you believe me? I trust you, I just want to know what's going to happen." Suliang replied casually, "But since you don't want to say it, I'll just stop asking. Don't worry, I will remember what you said." And heard this. The Queen of the Abyss unconsciously showed a happy smile. Although it is a subconscious answer, only the subconscious answer is truly sincere. Therefore, in his heart, he has always believed in me. In order not to embarrass me, he didn't ask anything even though he was confused. That's enough. The foreign passage fluctuated for a while, causing Qin Benjao and others waiting outside the passage to become nervous. Now, the others all retreated. After 3 days of fighting, they were so exhausted that they went back to rest. As for the aftermath here, someone will naturally take care of it. Only Qin Benjao and other girls are waiting here with the Holy Lord 11 He Ying. They all knew that it was Suliang who entered this passage and solved all this. But now that the creatures of the abyss have receded, it's time for our men to come back, right? Next moment. Then there was a figure walking out of the foreign passage. It's Suliang. Suliang. Qin Benjao immediately rushed forward and hugged her man. "You haven't come back for a long time. We are all worried about you. Are you okay? Say it." Qin Benjao moved her hand up to check it. Fine. Suliang shook his head and glanced at his ladies. He looked at his ladies who all looked tired, and all of them looked a little dirty in their pretty clothes.